February 27. Out of retirement. Tarval lay as still as stone beneath the morning sun. He'd chosen a sheltered spot, a groove in the earth under the shaggy branches of a spinoa bush growing close to the edge. His head had rested on his hands as he slept, and his fingertips touched the edge of a cliff. 100 feet below, in a small box canyon, campfires burned and people begged for mercy. His wife stood tall before her captors and said nothing, and his children were silent. Through the scope, Tarvel could see their faces, pale as ghosts, their lips quivering as they strove to hold back their tears. Tarvel counted the men around his wife, fixing their positions in his mind, and then slowly and carefully he raised his rifle and sighted. The first shot took the raiders' chief in the head, and the second brought down the man at Amala's back. Neither had hit the ground but when the third man fell, and by then his son was moving. Racing forward, the youngster snatched up the dropped blaster and unsheathed the second raider's blade. With a few quick strokes, the boy had freed his mother, palming knife and blaster into her hands as he stooped and took the weapons from the next raider. By then, Tarval's daughters were by his side. Amala wasted no time looking for him, and Tarval was grateful. She knew he'd join them as soon as he could. In the meantime, 4 more raiders fell, and by then Amala had reached their shuttle, the children following swift on her heels. People cried out not to be left behind, but his family did not seem to hear. That, too, was according to plan. They left the colonists still tied and shackled behind them, the shuttle lifting smooth and swift as Amala sent the distress signal. It passed over him seconds later, but didn't stop, and he resisted the urge to wave. Amala's voice sounded briefly in his ears. Keep them alive. Alive. Not safe. She'd found the traitor then. Tarvel smiled as he settled to his work. There were several raiders left, and it was interesting to see who they chose to try and murder first. They were dead, their reinforcements having joined them on the ground by the time Amala had returned. She was, surprisingly, not alone, and the armoured figures that disembarked from the second craft were swift to take her, and the children, into custody. Tarvel Jr. fought like a wildcat, even though his mother did not. She pointed at 3 villagers before she raised her hands. Them. And their response condemned them more than anything else she might have said. The newly arrived commandos had to pull their outraged neighbours off them, but they were swift enough that the traitors still lived. Tarvel figured he could solve that and raised his rifle one last time. Don't. The voice was accompanied by the muzzle of something considerably larger being pressed into the centre of his back. Leaves rustled as they were pushed aside, and servos whined as an armoured hand reached down and pulled him to his feet. Tarvel kept hold of his rifle long enough for it to be confiscated. He was hoping they'd return it. The light of teleportation flared around him, and he found himself put back together on board a ship, his captor's grip still firm. Stay in human form, she instructed, shifting her grip on the back of his neck. Stay in human form, she instructed, shifting her grip to the back of his neck. Tarvel lifted his lips in a silent hiss, barely managing to suppress the sound. She noticed, and she laughed. Your wife said much the same. She let go. This way. She led, and he followed, to where Amala and the children were waiting. Stay or go? They asked, but before Tarvel could reply, the comm screen fizzed and sprang to life. Judging from the looks on their faces, the call was unexpected. We'll protect you, were the first words from Hector's mouth as, in the background, his front door shattered and boots thundered through his house. You're not the only ones. His words ended abruptly as one of the soldiers kicked in the door to his office and shot him. Tarvel hadn't realized the communications were two-way until the man responded to his cry of horrified outrage. Quit yammering, he's not dead, he'll come round in a couple of hours. Man has some explaining to do. He certainly did. Firstly, because he'd hacked a battlecruiser's secure communication system. And secondly, because protect them? He hadn't been able to protect himself. Calculated risk, Hector told them a few days later. Contact you or let you vanish into the ether. You're not the only retiree on the world. The man had greeted them when they'd first arrived and never said a word. Never thought I'd have to, he told them. Didn't expect for anyone to know what I'd been before. Just like him and Amala. Well, they knew now, and the colony was demanding they bring their old skills back online. Their unexpected rescuers only smiled and gave them an ultimatum. You can stay and help this world defend itself, the corporation had said, or you can come with us and we'll hide you again for a price. The choice had been easy. Both Tarvel and Amala had kicked free of Odyssey 2 years before. They liked the normal life. There was no way they were going back.